Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 52. I am your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com. With us is a nationally acclaimed cartoonist and illustrator, Daphne Lage.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
No, you are acclaimed and you're nationally known.
Technically, I'm international, but we're good.
Technically, yeah. I could have said internationally known. Yeah. So
I have relatives all over the place.
So welcome, Daphne. This is great. We'll talk about you have a Kickstarter that has, I think we said, was it 19 days left already?
Yeah, there's 19 days. Yeah.
Okay, as of this recording.
Time flies.
And
I felt like I launched it yesterday.
I mean, geologically speaking, it was yesterday. So.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a bit, and also too, and it's you're already well over your goal. You hit your goal. You got 67 backers so far.
Yeah.
Well into the stretch goal, so that's exciting for you. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a bit, but we also want to. You've been watching your YouTube. We just talked before we went on the air. I've been watching your YouTube videos. You got a wealth of information there. You got a wealth of, you do great live streams. And if you love parrots and you love art, this is probably
if you don't mind your eardrums getting ruptured. Yeah, the live streams are good. That's
also fantastic. You get great tips and tricks that we'll talk about in a little bit. But first, for our viewers, I don't know if we wanted to first kind of introduce yourself, talk about how you got into art, talk about how important Rocket Raccoon and of course,
absolutely. Patron saint.
But yeah, I'll just hand over the reins to you, Daphne, and you can kind of give an intro, and then we'll jump right into it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daphne Lage, and I am a cartoonist, illustrator, and comic book artist from New York. I have been self-publishing fantasy comics since 1992, and I am known for my funny animal fantasy Tall Tales, which you can see behind me here, and my medieval drama Ego Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, which is now currently on Kickstarter, which we'll talk about later. You can read both my comics at Tall Tales Online, that's TAILS online.com, and egoworks.com, EGOWORKS.com. And as he said, you can watch my videos on how I make these comics and other things at YouTube at Daphne Lage, Lage art.
That's great. Yeah. And as it's like we pull up for you as well as to that we have right here, you got, so you have egoworks.com, you also have Tall Tales. So this one is more to EgoWorks is more for you specifically, and we'll Tall Tales story.
Yeah, right? Tall Tales is very specific to that comic. EgoWorks is my main portfolio site where I also host the Ego Raven comic that is currently on Kickstarter. It's like, put a little slash every time I mention it. So that way, this way, it's kind of like a hub for everything that I do. Because it's not just comic book work that I do. It's like I do like illustrations and pinups, and I've done commissions for people and logo design, and and all my social media links are on this website too. So everything's here.
Now, and you mentioned, so you're being is this like your full-time gig doing art, or is this something that you, I remember go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because I remember in one of your Q&A, which I watched, it says, once you got 800 subscribers, you're going to answer 30 questions. So I watched that. And you did talk about how you try to make sure that you're at least doing artwork, drawing
right.
At least between 1 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
So is this part of it too, as you said, this is this what you do? Like, this is your career full time?
For the past, I've been working full time since 2013.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Because that's when I got laid off from my previous job. So, So once that happened, it's like I had been working regularly, uh, you know, real jobs, I guess. Usually they weren't like specifically art related, but they were tangentially because they were all in printing.
Okay.
So I've been working like in and out of those jobs for a while. And then in 2013 was kind of like, I don't know, like the final straw for me. And but the thing is though, not for nothing though, I had been preparing for that for like the previous 10 years. I don't want to make it sound like oh, 2013 came around, I got fired and it's like, oh yay, I can do whatever I want now. No, it took planning up until that point. So when I did get laid off, I was prepared. So that's kind of what finally pushed me into doing this full time. Yeah, that's kind of like the long and the short of it. It's like it was sudden, but at the same time I was prepared for it. So yeah.
And one of the things you talked about too in some of your previous interviews is that you kind of moved more towards like the pen and the pen and paper, you like doing the hand drawn stuff with inking. And you also mentioned I think you mentioned before as well, is that you tend to lean more towards doing the coloring through digital,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
So okay.
I know. I'm sorry. I know.
No, I get my question for you is like, how did you was this by happenstance, or is this something that was kind of measured where you just you found that doing one in one way and one in the other way seems to flow better from your style, or is this more based off of from, I guess, what's my question now is like, is it based off of personal style or based off of time issues, trying to fit most time?
It's both actually. For like because like I I literally predate the computer. So, you know, so I probably didn't start using like digital technology until I was at the School of Visual Arts. So most of that was me, just even before that was me just using traditional media, pen, paper, and coloring with markers, pretty much mostly the ever present Prismacolors. And the thing is though, it's like once digital became more accessible to me, there were certain things that I started transferring to digital because it was a better workflow and it made things easier. Like coloring, definitely I moved digitally because one, it allowed me to get the style that I was always looking for, that I couldn't manage to get the way I wanted to traditionally, which was kind of like this cell shading style, this anime type of coloring. And also another thing too is that it's like it just gave me a cleaner look that I preferred, as opposed to like using markers or watercolors. And it's like, and there are just some times where it's like, I don't want it to look like, like, oh, here's the texture of the paper coming through. And it just makes it easier to reproduce too, because it's like, I'm not trying to scan in watercolors. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried that. And it's like, that's practically a nightmare to do. Even scanning in markers can be really tricky. So being able to color digitally saves me a huge headache. Another thing that I transferred digitally was lettering. Up until that point, first I started off like drawing the word balloons, incorporating the word balloons into the artwork themselves. And then what I would do was that I would print out the lettering on like a dot matrix printer.
Oh, wow.
And then glue it down. I mean, it looked horrible, but it was the closest. I mean, it was either that or hand lettering, and that I definitely couldn't like get the hang of. So at least it looked horrible, but it was an improvement as to what I could have ended up doing. And then once, you know, like Photoshop and Illustrator and all those programs became easier to get, you know, because before you could only get those programs, you had to access them at school.
Right.
You know, so once those programs also became available, then it's like, oh, I can letter in the computer, but it still took a while before I stopped pasting down the lettering. Because yeah, I probably have like maybe like 5 issues of the original series for Tall Tales that everything is just glued down. Like it's I can't do anything with it. I mean, and then it's like once I figured out that I could letter it I could scan in the artwork and letter everything digitally, so I never have to glue anything down on the paper. That was a game changer for me, because you know how hard it is to cut out word balloons. You know? I'm serious. It's like I had special little scissors for it and everything just to cut out the word balloons to glue them down.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so there was so digital really, there's a lot of things that I'm like going, thank God for digital, because I could not think of doing that type of thing, you know, going back to that. But the only thing I haven't transferred to digital is actually like inking and drawing. It's that's I don't know, that seems to be like too weird for me. So I never I can't say never, I mean, but I just haven't really gotten the hang of it to feel comfortable to like completely take out the physical element.
Right.
Yeah.
And I see you, yeah, because I've seen what you do, and you have a really good tutorial video. So everybody, you know, please check out Daphne's YouTube channel. It is amazing. You did this one I saw where you did, I don't know if you remember this, it was like a few years ago. You did this one tutorial about, you take an image, you take a drawing, and then you scanned it in to make a copy of it so you can ink it.
Yeah.
And then you scan that back in, and then you do the CMYK thing where you move.
Right. That was another game changer too, because up until that point, it's because it's like you know, after you finish inking and it's like you're erasing and you're just spending all day erasing, and then all of a sudden the eraser catches and then pulls up the paper, that type of thing, you know. And I don't remember where I had gotten that idea from. I know I must have seen it from somebody, but it's like, wait, I could actually not have to erase anything. And yeah, and then it's like I just became completely addicted to blue lines.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and you mentioned too, and it's always, and if you ever, you know, and I watching your tutorial videos reminded me of other tutorial videos, that there's always the one thing that you'll say that completely changes how you do it. Like the one thing says, scan it in color.
Right.
Because if you don't, and you said you'll have all this gray, and then you can't get rid of that. So
right, because I've made that mistake. But the thing is, you gotta remember, like I guess to put it in aviation terms, you know, like every button is here in blood. So it's the same thing where it's like everything I say to do or not do, it's because I spent a lot of time troubleshooting that. You know, don't make the same mistakes I did, kids.
And that's a good point. And you did mention in one of your 30 question video, talking about advice.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and what did how'd you phrase it? You said something along the lines of, I don't offer advice, but if someone asks me for advice, I'll give it to them.
Because that's also something that's built in blood, I guess. It's like, because because it's like there was one incident where I don't know what I was thinking, and I just completely went off on someone's painting, and then it's like I got completely dogpiled for it online. And this was back in the message board days. This is not in Twitter days. So it's like, you know, it was still like a closed group and all that. And it was just like, and now I look back on that, it's like, what was I thinking? I mean, it's like the guy was just showing off his artwork. Why did I have to open up my big mouth? If he asked, that would have been different. But so it's like, I do not, I try I really try not to give advice unless it's specifically asked for, because
Right.
sometimes it's kind of like sometimes people just want to show their artwork and get like a pat in the back and call it a day. It's like, and that's fine. Sometimes you just don't want to hear, it's like, oh well, your color's off and what's with this composition and blah blah blah, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like like people who whine about, like, they complain about something but they just want to complain, they don't want and an answer for it, they just want to get it out of their system. So that's I don't give advice unless specifically asked.
and and talk to us a bit about too, is like with because you've been, now as you said, you've been a published, you've been publishing, it's like Tall Tales since 92. So so it's been 19, no, well, it's,
10 years ago.
we're in the same age range, so it's you've been doing it longer than probably most people have. Well, and it shows. Your artwork is, your artwork is fantastic. Now, tell, what were some of the things that talking about the advice side of things, what were some of the things that that you were told, like even when you're going through your high school art school, and then in advice that you were given that you've been able to still, as you talk about, the pilot buttons, that you've been able to keep making sure you utilize every single time you pick up a pen or pick up a pencil?
Well, you see, the problem is that, well, one, I was actually a late bloomer when it came to like really studying my craft. Like I really wasn't seriously doing artwork until I entered high school, which was the High School of Art and Design here in New York. Um, and then even then, I was like, I was just like one of these like stubborn kids. You couldn't tell me anything, and I just wanted to just draw and leave me alone type of thing. So to tell you the truth, I think I missed out on more advice when I needed it. And I actually like look back on and go, ah, damn it, I should have done that. So yeah, it was, yeah, because even when I went to SVA, it's like I don't think I really paid attention to any class I was in. And mind you, it's like, I had Will Eisner as a teacher. I
Oh
had
wow.
Carmine as a teacher. I had Denny O'Neil as a teacher, and I was sitting there going, oh, whatever. I don't know who you guys are anyway. And that's, and I think that's, I mean, looking back, I think like the biggest learning thing that I got out of that was that I should have paid attention.
Yeah.
I should have realized like what they were saying and what they were trying to say. And it's like, maybe I wouldn't still be struggling with stuff right now. But that's like, so don't be an ass in school, kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, in life, we're taught everything we need to know. It's just whether or not we paid attention at the
Right. Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Because it's like I look back now and it's like going, oh my God, it's like so much wasted opportunity.
So talk about us, your process. So as I say, your YouTube channel, come, also on, uh, pull this up here for everybody to see. You got a great, as I say, I've been love watching your videos. And when your live streams, you talk about, you see, you kind of start off with like, start off with a paper, you start drawing, then you're inking. Now, I haven't dived into all of them to see that. Do you actually also too, is like, once it's in there, you scan it in? How do you talk to people about what you do for actually the, like you said, the coloring, but also the word bubbles, and how do you transpose that from, do you have a written script out, or how do you?
Oh yeah, it always starts with a script.
Okay.
With Tall Tales, it's written by JD Calderon. So I'm taking a script from different person, and then translating that into the artwork, into the lettering. So yeah, so it's like so when I get a script there, I spend some time just breaking everything down and highlighting dialogue, make sure I'm not missing any dialogue, breaking down scenes. I mean, really getting into the minutia of what goes where so that I know how to map it on the paper. Because it's like, not only do I have to, it's like I have to map 32 pages. Like I have to decide, okay, this story has to be 32 pages. And then I have to break that 32 pages down into segments that is going to be, okay, I have 32 pages. I can have 5 scenes in this. And it's like, okay, but the script has 7 scenes. How I'm going to, it's like, so there's certain segments I have to break down even further. And then once I have my segments, my scene segments, then I break it down by what's going on in that scene. So it's like, so to make sure that everything, like the characters and the dialogue, flow into one another correctly for that scene. Because it's like, you just don't want like talking heads, and you just don't want like sudden jolts of scenery just changing. It's like you have to have I go for like a certain consistency in a scene, kind of like, like a movie, where it's like, okay, so how would the camera move that's not in a way that's not jarring to the reader? So yeah, and then from there I break down how the dialogue is going to break down in those panels, because you don't want like those huge word balloons or something. So it's like, and also it's like I want people to be able to, like, they read it and they hear it in their head as someone speaking it,
Right.
opposed to like, like nobody talks in like this big chunk of dialogue. It's like usually it's like there's pauses and there's inflections and things, and I try to get that in the word balloons. Right. So when you're reading it, it sounds natural more, in terms of dialogue or speaking.
So how does that work with you with when you, as you say, when you collaborate with JD Calderon? How much of that, because you guys have been working together now for
that's
20 years.
Beginning.
Yeah. So how much of the work that you do there, where you've come back to him and say, we got to change this, or we're like, get rid of this, this isn't going to fit, if you want to do, and how much do you have as like, who's the final say in in those issues, basically?
Mostly for Tall Tales, he's the final say. But the thing is, though, is that, like, because we've been working on this project for so long, we kind of know like each other's way of working. So it's like he writes his scripts in issues, as opposed to writing the entire story at once and then counting on me to break it down. He literally gives me a script that, okay, this is issue 6. And then that already puts me in the mindset that what's in this script is going to fit in this issue. And then I go into breaking it down. The funny thing is like the beauty of digital printing and print on demand is that now, I'm working on an issue now where it ended up being 4 pages longer because I needed space. So it's like, instead of being 32 pages, it's 36. Yeah, there we go. Math is not my strong suit, apparently. So it's 36. Now, when we were printing back then and using offset printers, I could not do that. Because it's like, one, we had to do printing in multiples of 8, and that added significant cost to the to the printing. So it was like, no, you have to make it fit. But now it's like, if I needed a little breathing room, it's like, okay, I have to do this in 4-page increments, and it's not really that big of a deal printing wise. And the thing is, though, and in terms of like how much say I have in it, it's very rare that I've come across something where it's like I like either like didn't get it, or it's like, what is this? It's like it's more like, it's just more the questions I usually have for him is like, well, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, so I'm not understanding how the scene works. And then usually he kind of explains to me, it's like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And then from that, I can work. But there's never been a point where it says like, oh, this can't be here. Because I guess because like we know the type of we know the type of story we're working on, so it's not so I know completely what to like expect thematically and everything. So I think there was like one story that he asked me to like beta read or something, and it's like, and I didn't like one of the, it had nothing to do with Tall Tales, it was for his other book, the Oswald Chronicles, and I didn't like the way one of the characters was written, and I told him that. And the thing is though, I told him, it's like, look, you asked me to read it and I'm telling you what I'm thinking, but that doesn't but that's not an obligation on you to do anything about it,
Right.
because it's like it's like, you know, I didn't want to give him the idea that I'm telling him like his favorite band sucks or something, So it's like, no, it's like, look, you're asking me, I'm telling you why,
Right.
but it's up to you whether you want to do anything with that information or not. And in this particular case, he actually made like certain characterization changes to a certain character. Because before they were kind of like not really a full-fledged character, and then once I told him all that, then he kind of mixed it up a bit, and it became it became a better character. But there was another book where I read it and I'm like going, I really, really dislike this character. But that's just me. That's not necessarily a slam on the story. So that's kind of like how we push and pull a bit, because it's like, it's all subjective in the end. So yeah, that's we're kind of old hat at this.
So let's talk a little bit about Ego Raven. So for the listeners who listen to the podcast, Ego, EGORAVEN. So in case people are hearing my New England accent thinking I'm saying Eagle Raven, it's not
Right,
Eagle Raven, it's Ego Raven. So and so let me ask you, because you've been working on this project for a while. You've had this story for a while now. Tell me, was this the perfect timing for you to say, all right, it's time to launch this Kickstarter, or because you learned a lot as you're working, say, with other projects, that you finally decided to say, all right, it's time for me to launch this?
It was kind of like birth from chaos type of thing, because the project started off like, I keep saying it started off at School of Visual Arts, but actually it was like the seeds of it started in high school at Art and Design.
Okay.
And the thing is that the character started off as kind of like a personal mascot, self-insert type of thing, something to make fanfic easier to write or something. I don't know. It was just, something just dopey, just, and then it's like when I entered the School of Visual Arts, then it's like she turned more into like, okay, this is my personal logo. I used her on my website. It's like, like a literal mascot type of portfolio thing. And then the longer I started like tinkering with it, the more it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a story here. I'm getting a story here. And that's pretty much just how it kind of like slowly snowballed. It's like I was working on Tall Tales as my main book, and then to relax, I would work on, I would work on Ego Raven. And I never, after all that time, I really didn't take it too seriously. I mean, that's why it's like I just, like if I did pages, I just dumped it on my website online, and it's like, okay, whoever reads it reads it. And it's like I played around with stuff, and I really didn't take it serious. But when lockdown finally happened in March, that's when I started kind of like, it's like, wow, I had no idea I had really this much free time, So what happened was that I started like, maybe we should color something, maybe we should finally color that, see what happens, see how it looks. So at first it started off as just me, again, tinkering. It's like, okay, let's see how it looks in color, learn how to color properly. I was watching tutorials, and then the more it started coming together as a color book, the more it's like, yeah, I have to do something with this. And then it's like I finished coloring it, and then I relettered it, and then it's like all of a sudden I had like this full color book. And again, thanks to digital printing, color was incredibly feasible. So it's like, again, it's like I got to do something with this. And then I started seriously putting it together. But the problem was that my story wasn't finished. So because I have 5 issues already inked and lettered of this thing in the old style. And then I have like 2 more issues after that laid out that I just have to adjust. I just have to pencil out. And then it's like I had up until a certain point that I had just completely stopped the story, because it's like I hit a wall, or I don't know whether it was just like I really hit a wall, or I was kind of like disinterested because it's like, oh, there was no real outlet for it or something, or I wasn't giving it a real outlet. And then like these past, especially, and then it's like as lockdown went on and the longer things started getting like weirder and whatnot and more intense, all of a sudden it's like I just started like, I have to work on this. I have to work on this. And also the funny thing too is that I started meeting more people online and doing more podcasts and stuff because we weren't doing conventions. And for some reason, talking to all these people kind of gave me a second wind that it's like, this could be a real possibility to do this book. And then this past 3 months was like 20 years of noodling just collapsing in on itself. And I just like rocked the end of that book. like I even surprised myself. Like that 3 months, I was just pounding away, just getting the rest of the scene, just completing that story arc. And it got to a point where I wrote the last line in the book, in the story arc, in the story, the last line, the last word, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I must have like started laughing for 15 minutes hysterically like a crazy person, because all of a sudden that pressure from 20 years of working on this project was now like lifted. That it's like, I have a finished story. I have something to actually aim for. I just have to draw this now. I don't have to think about the story anymore. And it was just the wildest thing. And it's like, it's just like, okay, let's put this in Kickstarter, make it official, and just move it forward. And I made it so like definitive. I have the rest of the year scheduled out for when issue 2 is coming out, issue 3 is coming out, issue 4 is coming out, the trade is coming out January 2021 for those first 4 issues. Like I never do schedules. But for this one, it was like, you know what? 2020 was such a crazy year. 2021 is like, go big or go home.
Right.
It's like, I need to do this.
And so talk to us a bit about the actual just kind of like the summary of what people know about Ego Raven, the
Oh,
story.
right. So Ego Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, is a fantasy drama kind of soap opera type thing where Tall Tales is the action adventure, running, jumping, skipping, climbing Mount Doom type of story. Ego Raven is my medieval soap opera. And it's a multi-issue comic book series in the style I like to, kind of like the Chronicles of Narnia meets The Witcher type of thing. Oh, and that's the thing too. It's like when I watched The Witcher, that was another thing that kind of like really, really pushed me to finish the script, because I watched The Witcher and I saw it do fantasy that I had no idea. Like, it gave me permission to do certain things in fantasy that I didn't know I needed. So it was just like, okay, this is like kismet right here, So the first issue that's on Kickstarter right now, but it's pretty much sets the tone for the entire series. It's 32 pages in full color and introduces Ego Raven. She's a half unicorn, half human princess who lives, being a princess, lives a rather sheltered life in Edenron. It's a magical valley where elves and unicorns live. It's kind of like the only place where it exists in this realm, as far as anyone knows. So she is the firstborn of the unicorn king Alaric, and a human woman who was turned into a unicorn through an enchantment. And although Ego Raven is a princess, the elves really don't dig her very much because of the whole half-breed thing, and the thing is, like, the unicorns aren't really too crazy about her either. It's like, oh, you too weird type of thing. And and that kind of like weird conflict going on, where it's like, yeah, you belong here, but type of thing. So with the elves in this valley, so because of generations of interbreeding with captured humans, because the valley itself is enchanted, and any human that comes in becomes enchanted themselves, and everyone's trapped in that valley. So the elves have pretty much lost their own magic because they like people too much. And so they depend on the unicorns to kind of like to still connect them to their, I guess, like their kind of like whatever magic is left in them. And they're hoping, so the elf king and the unicorn king, her Alaric, her father, they arrange a marriage between Ego Raven and Prince Rillian, the crown prince of the elves, in hoping that their union would strengthen the magic bond between the two races, I guess. But because there's always a but, right?
Yeah.
Rillian has a different set of ideas. And what he did was he went into, like, he colluded with this race of dragons, these kind of humanoid dragons they've been wanting the valley for themselves because it's part of their own mythology. Mm-hmm. And so he colludes with them to overthrow his own family, so that, he figures, okay, you do the hard work and I'll come in and I'll become king, until he finds out the hard way that dragons don't share. So what happens is that Ego Raven and her uncle Amadeo, they escape the valley, and now they have to kind of maneuver in the kingdoms of men now. And because of the reputation that unicorns and elves have, that adds its own level of complication to their now new situation that they're in. So so they have to maneuver a lot to survive now, and try to figure out how they're going to get back to the valley and drive the dragons out. And that's the setup.
Yeah. And so talk to us a bit about your so you know, with your Kickstarter, what can people get? What are your levels, your pledge
Oh,
levels?
well, okay, so to start off, you could just get a PDF. You know, it's like that's especially recommended for internationals, considering how expensive shipping is. So you get a PDF, but you know, and then it's like you get the full color comic. You get the full color comic and the PDF. Everything comes with the PDF.
Okay, cool.
So and once you go beyond the main level, which is the hard copy book and the PDF, all the other subsequent levels come with those two items, and then what you're getting for, I guess, like the extra price are the variant covers.
Okay.
So you have a virgin cover, which is the cover that doesn't have any logos on it, so it's just the artwork. And then we have a silver foil cover, which is just the line art printed on silver foil.
Okay.
And then the one that I like the best is the hollow foil, which is it's what I call the rainbow cover, you know, unicorns. And it's just this really, really spectacular, you know, like hollow effect cover that I just love it. And if you want something a little bit more special than that, I have two sketch tiers where there's one where you can get the book and the PDF and a little like blue line sketch of a random character from the book. Or if you want everything to be like consistent comic book wise, then I have my final tier, which you get it's a sketch cover variant where it's a book with the blank cover, and then I draw original artwork on the cover, but the interior is the same as all the other book as the main book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you, like, so I got a question for some tips. So this is your third Kickstarter, but this is the 9th Kickstarter that because you also did 6 Kickstarters with JD Calderon,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So what did you do from an advice perspective of it? Because I'm, you know, on behalf of our listeners and viewers, asking you for advice. So what were some of the things that you learned from your previous Kickstarters that you were able to implement here to make this one such a success?
Right. Well, well, the main thing that I did with this Kickstarter was I started with a modest campaign goal.
Okay.
Because I'm doing everything myself and I know how much these books cost and whatnot. You know, it's like my cost is kind of low. I mean, yeah, in terms of time, not really, but in physical cost, it's low. So there's no reason for me to ask like $2,500 for a campaign when $500 is fine and dandy for me to get this book out. Because also it's like I'm not offering like a lot of crazy options or anything, you know, like hardcover and slip cases and, you know, magnets and lighters, or I don't know, all the crazy stuff that people seem to put on their Kickstarter. I tried to keep it as basic as possible because the lower my cost is, the lower I can keep like the pricing for the individual books and also like the pricing for, you know, the actual goal.
Right.
I just had to make $500 and I did that in 7 hours once the campaign started. So at least that, no pressure, you know. It alleviates a lot of pressure. You know, right now I'm in the plateau stage. So this is like this is where the grind really, happens. And so that was my main thing. It's like, if I don't need to go crazy with the goal, I'm not going to, because I would rather just fulfill at a lower goal than sweat not being able to reach a higher one or a more ambitious one. And another main thing was that just have everything ready by the time this Kickstarter was, and that's like the most important thing. I had a proof for this book in October. And I was launching in January.
Wow.
And I had a proof already. So when this Kickstarter is over, when the Kickstarter's over, I'm doing a 21-day campaign on Indiegogo because people are finicky about their platforms. So at least, it's like, okay, if you didn't want to support it on Kickstarter, here's an Indiegogo. You can support it on, it's all good. And so once that when the Indiegogo ends, I can send my files out like that. That's it. I mean, it's like there's nothing to wait for because everything is done. All my files are done. Everything's been proofread to death, and the layout I'm happy with, and the whole thing. It's like those were the two main things. So keeping a modest goal and having everything ready when the Kickstarter started.
Where do you get these? Where do you get these printed, especially like that rainbow cover? I'm looking at your pictures on here. They are super fun.
Right. Yeah. I think if you scroll all the way down to there you go. There's the so those are the it's print on demand, and they were able. I mean, if you literally want to know, I don't know them off the top of my head, but I can send you the price list when we're done, if you need it, or if you wanted to pass it around. I mean, I recommend these printers all the time. So whoever wants to know, I'm more than happy to send the info.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And what made you decide on kind of splitting this up when you actually sat down to make these pledge levels? How much time and thought did you put into saying, oh, I like the idea of a sketch cover, and I like the idea of this rainbow?
Right.
cover.
Yeah. Well, it's like one, I definitely wanted to do the shiny covers.
Yeah, that's like awesome.
I'm a raven, so it's like, ooh. But also, it's like what I wanted to do is I didn't want to overwhelm myself because I'm the one going to be fulfilling this. So I'm the one that has to draw the sketches, So I didn't want to do anything too crazy that was going to like eat into too much time to fulfilling. So I tried to keep it as basic. Everything as basic as possible because I needed to make it simple for me to fulfill. So I didn't want to go like too overboard with the rewards. In fact, it's like for the next Kickstarter, there's a couple of things that I'm probably going to change on the next one just to make it even simpler.
Okay.
So because I personally dislike going onto Kickstarter pages and getting confused as to what's being offered.
Okay.
Like there's some Kickstarter pages where they just like you scroll. They have so much stuff, and I have no idea what I'm buying. Like, I mean, it's the weirdest thing. It's like they just have so much stuff that it's like, don't you have like a basic level? I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
It's like when you go to that, one of those restaurants, you're like, wait, do I get a baked potato with this one or I don't get a baked potato?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what am I getting actually? I don't understand. Especially when they go really crazy with the variant covers. Like there's some campaigns that have like 20 of them or something. Like just like, oh my God. It's like that's slow down there. It's like just here. I have the 5 and that's it because I can count to 5. Please.
And you mentioned earlier too, this is all done. You already have all and how many issues you planning on it to be?
Well, the total, if I plan it correctly, I'm hoping no more than 15 issues.
Okay.
Because when I really broke it down, we're talking about 5 years worth of Kickstarters to get the entire 4 years worth of Kickstarters to get the entire series out.
And do you plan on for the second Kickstarter, there'll be like a tier for if somebody misses this one? It's like,
no, absolutely. Okay. And then not only that, because the stretch goal that we ended up that we reached for the $1,000 is a PDF of a prequel story that I wrote to this. So it's prose and illustration. It's illustration and prose, and which is something I also like to dabble with because it's like even though like a picture is worth 1,000 words, sometimes 1,000 words is easier to write. It takes less time. So So sometimes it's like I do the prose when it's like I want to get a story out, but I know it's like, I just don't have the energy to do it as a comic. So everyone who supports the campaign now is going to get this extra PDF, this extra this extra PDF, which with it's like I said, it's prose and illustrated, and it's a prequel explaining, pretty much telling the story of how Eagle Raven's parents met, because a half unicorn girl doesn't come out of nowhere, right? So this explains how that occurred. And but I had some people asking if I was going to release it as a hard copy. And the funny thing is that I did set it up to be a hard copy, and I actually got a proof back from the printer. But because I'm still not happy with the format, it's going to take me a while to fix everything and get another proof out. So for the second Kickstarter, barring anything, the physical copy of this story will be available with issue 2, with the issue 2 of the main story.
And what would, and also too, what do you have with, I want to talk about also your Patreon.
Yeah.
And this is amazing. You got a lot, you got a lot of, what do they call them? Stuff with the pokers in the fire. I don't know what the phrase is.
You have to. That's the thing. When we're, that's the thing with being a self-publisher, it's like you have to do everything yourself. It's a lot of hats,
right?
It's not like, this is, I'm running on a Netflix deal or something, it's like, oh.
What would be some of the benefits if someone was like backing on Patreon that they would see when you have Kickstarters pop up?
Well, I don't have like a specific Patreon Kickstarter crossover thing, although probably that's a good idea to do. Now that you mention it. Mostly what the Patreon is for is just like having an outlet for all the work in progress, and seeing, and like everyone gets to see the pages as I work on them. Okay. So, and then it's like they get like special PDFs. Like if you're the type of person who really likes process, I show you the process, and I give you PDFs of the process. So you get whenever I finish an issue, whether it's a Tall Tales or an Eagle Raven issue, you get like a PDF of it in blue lines, and then you get a PDF of it in inks, and then with Eagle Raven you get the complete PDF with the lettering and everything. With Tall Tales, you just get the line art and the blue line. So if you're the type that likes to compare, like how artwork changes from one to another, that's kind of like mostly what I offer. And then it's like, any like side projects that I can't really talk about in like openly right now, I'm able to talk about it on my Patreon, because it's kind of a closed group. And like I did this, I'm currently working on a short story for an anthology, but it's not like kind of official yet, but my Patreon knows about it and they've seen it. So they have the preview of that story before the anthology is even official. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a really good right into the heart of the things you're not going to see on your YouTube channel or your Kickstarter.
Right, yeah. I try to keep, I try to keep the Patreon as like you're not really seeing this anyplace else type of. I just have to figure out how to do live streams on it, and then I'll probably add that to it. But I haven't figured that. Patreon's kind of weird about how but pretty much it's like what the Patreon is you're paying a membership to kind of like keep me off the streets. It's about, it's like, you want to see me do like no matter what happens, you want to see me do these comics. So you're helping me, to concentrate on doing these comics.
Right. And you mentioned too in a previous interview, I thought it was a really good tip you gave, is that you have being explicit on what you have free and what you put behind a paywall.
Right. Yeah.
Because it is I mean, this is a, a career, and you have to make sure that you're, you know, there's that level of compensation which is expected for somebody in your professional capacity to have.
Right, because it's like that. Not everybody. I've gotten the hate mail for that already. So, yeah, it's like, so like with Ego Raven, like I said, you can read the original versions of the first 5 issues for free right now. So it's like, if you wanted to really know what you were getting into, you can do that.
Right.
So that when you support the Kickstarter, you know what you're getting. It's like, and the only difference is that what you see here, it's in black and white. It's lettered differently. Some of the dialogue is different, not by much, but because I tweaked it here and there, and like even some of the artwork changes a little bit. Depending on what I was decided to fix. So it's not like you're getting like identical things, but also at the same time, it's like, well, here you have to read it online. On Kickstarter, you're getting a physical copy.
Right.
And depending on the type of person you are, because for me, the joke is that I have my stuff online, but I can't read it. Because I just can't. I cannot. I literally just can't read my own stuff or just anything. Like, I have problems with digital media. Like with like reading Kindle and whatnot. It's like, I don't know. It's like with artwork, especially, like I really need it in front of me. I really need it as a physical thing. So even though for me, it's available, like, okay, it's available online for free, but it's like, you're really going to appreciate it if you have that full color book. Right. So that's kind of the incentive for that. With Tall Tales, though, that's the one that kind of gave me a little grief, because we have on the Tall Tales website, we have practically the entire story on there for free. However, it stops at the current storyline we're at, which is Tears of the Mother. That one, you could only see the new artwork on Patreon, and the completed book you can only see on Kickstarter. We're not putting it online until it's completely done. So, if you want to read that last story arc, you have to, in the end, you have to get the comics off of Kickstarter, right. To get it, because there's no place else that we're allowing it to be seen until we're done. And like I said, I've gotten the hate mail for that, but it's like, I'm like going, it's like, you have like 600 pages worth of stuff online already. Yeah. You can wait for, a little bit more for the new stuff.
So Daphne, we've reached our hour. So already, yeah. So people can find you is it at egoworks.com.
Yeah. EGOWORKS, in case either one of our accents get in the way.
and on there's a link there for your Kickstarter campaign. There's a link there for your YouTube. There's a link there for your Patreon.
Everything's there.
Everything's there.
Including a link to Tall Tales. So in case that's if you prefer, the Mount Doom, Lord of the Rings type stuff, that link is there too.
Right. There you go. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. And congratulations again for reaching your goal. And you know what? I mean, put us on your junket there. Your other ones, your other Kickstarters that you're coming through.
Absolutely. This was a blast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you had, because when you're doing your live stream yesterday, you had a different setup. That was like,
that was in my office that I used to do live streams in, but as you notice, the parrot makes it very difficult to do it. So, but the thing is, that's the only setup I have for drawing. So that's why I have a disclaimer at the beginning of my live streams for the parrot.
Right.
But for this, I'm in my basement. So I have my nice backdrop and it's quiet. So I'm not competing with anybody.